task force. This Facebook Live is about giving you, pensioners of Australia, the information about what's happening with your pension and some of the information about both the legislation that the federal government has tried to pass and indeed in some cases put through, changing how the pension and other Centrelink payments are managed, and also making sure you know where Morrison stands on the pension as a welfare payment and where Labor stands so that you can make an informed decision in coming months. The pension is important to thousands of people in my electorate. It's important to me. My grandma Pat was a pensioner, and I know that pensioners manage their money carefully and don't need to be told what to do or where they can spend their money. I really believe that if you've worked hard your whole life, you deserve to have a little bit of fun in retirement. And at the polite end, the cashless pension card is the fun police coming to ruin the retirement of millions of Australians. At the more serious end, I think it's a real assault on the human rights of people across Australia. So we're going to go through the facts, we're going to go through the legislation. I'm going to try and answer some of your questions. So if you've got a question, please ask it in the comments of Facebook. I'll try and get to those in a few moments' time once people have logged on, and we'll go through some of those questions that I know you have if I haven't already answered them. And if you want other people to be able to join us in this Facebook Live conversation, please share. Just hit the share button, bounce it out to your friends so we can share this information and hopefully make sure that more and more people know what it is that Scott Morrison and his ministers are trying to do with the Australian pension across the country. It's also, I think, we've seen today, and it's appropriate that we're doing this Facebook Live today, we've seen a $135 billion deficit announced by Treasurer Josh Frydenberg and Scott Morrison. And I think for people who've given us the biggest deficit in Australia's history to be at the same time trying to lecture pensioners and other welfare recipient payments, like people who are on disability support pension, people who are on other payments, to lecture them about how to manage their money, that's just wrong. When the Scott Morrison and Josh Frydenberg are handing down $135 billion deficits, they need to get back in their box rather than trying to tell pensioners of Australia who do manage their money well how they should be spending it. So let's have a look at what we know so far about the cashless pension card and the cashless debit card across Australia. The Liberal government have said they plan to roll out this privatised cashless debit card nationally and to force people onto the card. In December 2020, they passed legislation known as the Social Security Brackets Administration Bracket Amendment Bracket Continuation of Cashless Welfare Bracket Bill 2020. Under this legislation, aged pensioners in certain geographic areas can be put onto cashless welfare. And this cashless welfare card is already running in parts of Australia. In parts of Western Australia, people on disability support pension and the carer pension the carer payment are already being put onto the cashless debit card. In far north Queensland, aged pensioners can be put onto the cashless debit card. What the cashless debit card does, if you haven't heard about this before, is it takes 80% of your pension or your payment from Centrelink and it quarantines it. It locks it up so that you can only spend it at certain places that the government says, choosing when, how and what you can spend your money on. In simple terms, it would stop pensioners from buying things like beer, wine and scratchies. The card is privatised. It's not run by Centrelink, it's not run by a government agency, it's run by a private organisation called Inju. So businesses who want to access payments from this card have to sign up to big, complex contractual arrangements that might take them weeks or months of time. It's a huge red tape burden for small businesses, and the government and this private company Inju have access to all of the data on how people have spent their money. They'll know where every single cent went. The card also looks different from your normal credit card or debit card. So people will know when you're using it that you're not just paying it out of your own pocket. It's like a little bit of a beacon. So instead of them saying when you're at at Woolies or whatever, saying clean up on aisle 5, you're going to hear them saying over the loudspeakers, cashless pensioner on aisle 1. It's embarrassing for people to have to deal with this. What's also embarrassing is that the government won't tell us the truth about how they have arranged the contracts for this cashless debit card. There are 855 contracts that the Department of Social Services has, but there's only one that they've kept completely secret. That's the cashless debit card contract. And maybe they've got good reason to keep it secret because they've spent some $79.7 million of taxpayer money, your money. These are the same people who are cutting Medicare, saying they can't afford to run Medicare, but they can afford $79.7 million to roll out the cashless debit card. We've got 13,396 Australians currently on this card, and the government wants to make that hundreds of thousands more. And it costs so much to put people on this card. The government spends, on average, $5,949 just to limit how much people can spend once they've gone onto the card. So more than $5,000 to put someone onto this management system. And then once you're on it, you're there for life unless you apply to get off it. You have to apply to the department. You have to provide even more personal information about how you're managing your personal finances. And in some cases, you have to be put in front of a community panel who will decide whether or not you can choose how to spend your money. The other thing that we've seen over time is the government deciding that they see that the pension isn't something that you earn because that you've served your country and served your community and worked and paid taxes your whole life. They see the pension as a, quote, welfare payment. This is what Scott Morrison said. The pension is a welfare payment for those who really, really need it. That's how Scott Morrison sees the pension. He doesn't think it's something that you earn. It's not a mark of respect from us as taxpayers to the community of Australia. He says that it's, quote, a welfare payment. And so where does Labor stand on all of this? I'm a member of the Labor Party. I'm the Labor member for Perth. I'm the Shadow Assistant Minister for Western Australia, and I'm working with my colleagues on the Protecting Pensioners Task Force. We've said that we will abolish the privatised card. We'll get rid of it. Scrap it. Gone. We'll repeal their cashless debit card legislation, and we'll make sure that we don't go down that sort of a track ever again, because we respect pensioners. And I think if you want, don't just take it from me, here's some of the things that some of my Labor colleagues have said about their commitment to stopping Scott Morrison's cashless pension card. You see this graphic from Anne Ali. Anne is a great West Australian. Anne has been out there campaigning day after day saying, we've got to stop this. And we also need to make sure people know what it is that Scott Morrison's been saying. Don't just take it from the West Australians. If I go to Richard Marles is the Deputy Leader of the Labor Party. I see to Anthony Albanese, pointing out the fact that this would put 80% of pensioners' payments onto this cashless welfare card. And I think the quote at the bottom of this is really important, where he says that this is a quote from Scott Morrison. He says, it's a quote from his minister, his social services minister, where they say, I see the cashless debit card becoming more of a universal platform. Now, sure, Medicare is a universal platform. That's a universal platform to help everyone with their health. But a universal platform to have everyone who gets any Centrelink payment on cashless welfare, that's not the sort of country that I want to be a part of building. Another great West Australian, Louise Pratt, has been looking at this issue of the rollout of the national cashless debit card. Pointing out, again, Scott Morrison says it's a welfare payment, but also noting that a national rollout will mean huge amounts of bureaucracy for small and family businesses here in WA. I know, and I've spoken to small business owners, they go, well, look, there's already enough on our plate right now in the middle of COVID. I don't know that we really need to be going and negotiating contracts to change our FPOS systems, change our cash registers and everything else. And if I move over to a great person, but not a great West Australian, Julian Hill from Victoria, he said very clearly and loudly, as the co-chair of Labor's Protecting Pensioners Task Force, we will stop the privatised cashless welfare card. And I think Julian's leadership, I just want to commend his leadership in terms of making sure that people in the Parliament, people in the committees that he works on, people in his community, and people across Australia through the Protecting Pensioners Task Force know exactly what is at stake. Now, I'm going to try and go to a few of your questions online, because I think one of the really important things, if you're giving us your time and sort of checking in on this, is for me to try and get some of your questions here. So I'm going to try and pull those up. Give me a second for the world's not greatest NBN to click into gear. Razia says, stupid idea. I agree. Ross Dalton is saying, why do they keep trying to flog it when it's going to make it even harder for people to use? Well said, Ross. We've got Peter is saying, vote Morrison out and put him on a cashless pension card with his poly pension. I think that's a pretty good idea, actually. I think there's a lot of double standards in politics where we say one thing for the community and politicians try and do another. Marie Summers has a similar suggestion. She says that Morrison needs to be put on one. I think Sue Atkinson, well said Sue. Sue's kind of pointed out what I think this is the real unfairness of this. She says, after working for over 50 years, I think we deserve our pension to be left as it is. I think it's a slap in the face for everyone over retirement age. Sue, I couldn't have said it better myself. It is a slap in the face for people of retirement age, particularly people who might have been living on the pension for 5, 10 or more years, to all of a sudden, halfway through your retirement, have things thrown up in the air, changed. You probably have to go into Centrelink again to reapply, get your new card, find out that all of a sudden you won't be able to use it at the Bedford Bowls Club. You won't be able to use it at your local newsagent. If you shop at an independent grocer rather than one of the big chains, it won't work for you. So there's those concerns too. Gary is also on the, if it's good enough for us, it's good enough for the pensioners. Then we've got Bridie saying, Scrobo can take his cashless welfare card. Gosh, I thought this was going to end badly. I thought it was going to be something rude, but it's fine. Scrobo can take his cashless welfare card and give it to his LNP mates. I agree. Dawn Riley pointing out that if you go down this path, your money won't be in your bank account. That's right. You won't have to log into just your bank online. You'll have to log into a separate thing. So you're going to be running 2 bank accounts. And I mean, when you're retired, do you really want to be doing this? And that's probably a good point for me to kind of dive back into, how does this thing actually work? And I might just get this graphic up from Carol Brown, which kind of has some of the summary of how this thing works, and I'll work through it in a bit more detail. So what it does first is it quarantines 80% of your pension payment that you would normally receive from the government. You can only then access that 80% using a specific and distinctive card. If you lose that card, you have no access to that money until Centrelink or Inju, the privatised organisation, sends you another one. The card is not operated by Centrelink, but operated by a private company called Inju. Now, until I heard about this card, I'd never heard of that company before. I don't know their track record. I'm sure they work very hard, but I'd be pretty concerned that we're outsourcing the core role of Centrelink to a privatised organisation. The card uses something called product level blocking. Product level blocking means that it stops you from buying certain products. And the people who know this and decide it are government officials, bureaucrats, and indeed those private operators. What product level blocking means is that the government has the ability to control what you buy and where you shop. Let's just have a look at some examples of that. The government could control the brand, size, and type of product that you purchase. A pensioner could be forced to choose the better value but more expensive 2 kilogram bag of flour rather than the 1 kilogram bag of flour. We've already got $2.7 million that's been spent into the technology behind that product level blocking. And we know there's a whole bunch of things that are definitely blocked. Gift cards that you might want to give to your grandchildren, blocked, stopped, not on anymore. You've got people who are looking at whether they might want to buy, a bottle of wine for a special occasion, buy a scratchy to put in the Christmas card. All of those things, product level blocks. And again, as I mentioned earlier, what we also know is that Inju and the government, the Department of Social Services, Centrelink and others, will be able to see exactly where you chose to spend your money. So what we also have is this need for businesses to sign up and get into this ecosystem. So if you're at a business where product level blocking isn't available, you can't shop there at all. That business is basically might as well be closed to you, locked up, not open at all. So the government kind of gets to choose which sorts of stores you shop at. And again, that's not just a huge bureaucracy for businesses, but it also restricts freedom and choice for pensioners. And then we have sort of the stuff that's been done behind closed doors, seriously secretive stuff here. We've got what's called the Technology Working Group. We don't see the minutes, we don't see the details, we don't see the decisions they make, But this secretive technology working group is the big four banks, Australia Post, Coles, Aldi and Woolworths, working together to see how they set up cashless welfare card systems, implement it for the cashless pension card, and then start to block you out of certain products that they would otherwise sell. And that means you've got two classes of people in the shopping centre. Now you've got two people in Woolworths, one who can shop anything on any aisle, and another who's stuck on the card and has to constantly check, look at the fine print on each label. Can I buy this with my card or not? Is this product blocked or not? And then if you go to the checkout, the embarrassment if you're trying to buy something that the government has decided in this backroom secretive technology working group that you can't buy it. It's a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of control for some of our most vulnerable people in society who are on the pension, and also people who've worked hard their whole lives. And that's the bit that's just not right with me. Now, you'll probably see the government say, no, we're not going to do this. This is just something that we're just trialling. But let's look at those trials. There are already people being forced onto this system. There are 5 trial areas so far: Cape York in Queensland, Ceduna in South Australia, Bundaberg, Hervey Bay region in Queensland, and 2 in Western Australia, the East Kimberley and the Goldfields. So huge geographical chunks of Western Australia are being put on this card, and the geographic creep continues. I might go back to some of your questions, and some of your comments on the Facebook. Give me a couple of seconds for the Scott Morrison's world-class NBN to bring them up. And while we do that, I'm just going to throw up the graphic from Justine Elliott, who's someone else who's really led this campaign. Justine has one of the highest proportions of retirees and pensioners of any electorate in Australia. She works incredibly hard for the Tweed. She's been passionate about this from the day the government first tried to introduce it. She's always stood up for pensioners because that's what Labor representatives do. We know that pensioners work hard, and it's a payment that people have worked hard their whole lives to deserve. And I just want to commend the work that Justine's done. And if anyone is watching from Justine's electorate, you are lucky to have a first-class representative in Justine Elliott. Now let's just see what we've got coming in on the Facebook. Thanks for all your comments, by the way. And if you've got a really specific technical question and I don't get to it now, I'll try and come back to them later in the day. But let's just see some of the comments we're getting. Dawn says that this is treating the adult population as fools. I agree, Dawn. Ed has pointed out what I was saying earlier. If you vote Labor, we will scrap this privatised card. We've got Terry suggesting that everyone should put the ALP candidate first. Well, I definitely agree that if you're in the Perth electorate, you should put the ALP candidate first, and I agree for that any electorate in Australia. Maggie says not a chance. She's worked for 50 years and it's insulting to her age. Robert, pretty simple message. Leave the pensioners alone. Couldn't agree more. David, with a little truth bomb here. LNP, the meanest people on the planet. David, that's probably a little bit too far. I'm not going to come to Scott Morrison's defence, but I would say that this cashless pension card is a pretty mean thing to do. Dawn has actually mentioned that, and Dawn, thanks for sharing this, by the way. Anyone who's watching, if you want to share this into your Facebook feed so your friends can see, please do share. Dawn's shared it, so thanks heaps for that. She said that Inju will be what Robodebt was a couple of years ago. Now, for those of you who don't remember Robodebt was when the government stopped having humans behind the system where people might have been overpaid at Centrelink payment and just started issuing these automatic debt notices. And then if you didn't pay the debt notice, they'd cut you off from your Centrelink payment or take you to court. And it turned out that the whole Robodebt scheme that Stuart Robert and Scott Morrison as Social Services Minister supported, and indeed Christian Porter as Attorney General was there giving them legal support saying, yeah, this is totally legal. It turned out it was completely illegal. And the government had to pay back about $1 billion back to people who'd been issued these illegal debt notices. And I commend the work that Bill Shorten has done in terms of tracking this down, not giving up day on day, pointing out the injustice of the Robodebt scheme. And Dawn, I think you might be right. This assault on the human rights of pensioners with the cashless pension card may very well be the Robodebt of the next couple of years. Paul asks what's happening with the Senate review into the disability pension. Paul, I don't know the answer to that, but we'll try and get you an answer a bit later. We've also got Paul saying time for grey power to rise. Well, look, I advocate everyone. You don't like what you're seeing, use your vote to change how this country is run. A few other comments there. I'll dive back into those in a minute. So let's just look at some of the values behind why the Liberals might be doing this. I think the first thing is they believe deeply in privatisation. The Liberal Party are the privatisers of Australian politics. We know here in Western Australia they tried to privatise Western Power in an attempt to send power bills through the roof. We know that they signed off on the lease of Darwin Port to a Chinese-owned organisation when they first were elected. And at every opportunity they get, they try and shift the public services into private hands. We saw that when they tried to look at privatising the Medicare payment system in 2015-2016. And we've also seen the other thing as to why Scott Morrison and his government might be doing this is that they don't really believe that the pension is a payment for older Australians. They believe it's just another bit of welfare. I'm going to give you a long quote from Scott Morrison. I can't do his voice, so apologies for that. Scott Morrison said, quote, "We know that the welfare system is a safety net. We know that the pension is a welfare payment. The pension is there as a safety net for people who, for whatever reason, over the course of their life, have been unable to accumulate the savings they would need to support themselves in retirement." This is the same Prime Minister who's presided over record low wages growth, somehow blaming people for relying on the pension that's been available for decades. He went on to say, quote, "These aren't independent retirees. They are on a pension, which is a welfare payment." Now, I think whether you are on a pension or a self-funded retiree or on superannuation, you are an independent retiree. You deserve to have freedom about where you spend your money. You deserve to have freedom about how you live your life. You deserve to have freedom about what you choose to buy as presents for your loved ones. And, I mean, if I'm allowed to go to a bottle shop and buy a bottle of wine on a Friday afternoon, I believe pensioners should be able to as well. And then we saw, well, who's Scott Morrison put in charge of this day to day? It's Senator Anne Rushton, who Scott Morrison personally appointed to oversee the cashless debit card and the rollout of the cashless pension card. In an interview, she said, "We are, quote, seeking to put all income management onto the universal platform, the cashless debit card." That's all income management. Now, that could at some point roll into family tax benefits, could roll into childcare payments. The way they're going, there is no clear point where they'll stop. When it comes to the question of attacking pensioners, it's a real concern. And it's not just, there's more of your comments. I've got to rely on the old printer because the NBN is not being my friend this afternoon. Now, if we look at what else they've done to attack pensioners, let's start by putting Barnaby Joyce in as Deputy Prime Minister. And then within 3 months of being Deputy Prime Minister, he is out there defending Christian Porter. Now, I don't know many pensioners in Western Australia who've got a good word to say about Christian Porter. Christian Porter put the lives of more than 200,000 West Australian pensioners at risk when he went to the High Court and backed Clive Palmer's case to tear down the WA border. And then the same guy who said it was legal to put pensioners onto cashless welfare went and gave $1 million to cover Clive Palmer's legal costs and gave tens of thousands of dollars in cash to Clive Palmer. And that's the guy that the Deputy Prime Minister is saying has just had a bad day at the wicket and is going to be back soon. And then we've got the never-ending ATM Abbott Turnbull Morrison wars. And we saw Prime Minister Turnbull yesterday pointing out how much we have let down pensioners when it comes to the vaccine rollout. He points out very clearly, the federal government did not order enough vaccines. Now, it shouldn't take a former Prime Minister and Prime Minister Turnbull to point out this fact. But I think he said it best when he said it's the biggest failure of public administration. Now, Malcolm Turnbull knows failures of public administration. He was in charge of the NBN, so he knows what he's talking about when he's talking about failures of public administration. But when it comes to a life and death thing, like the vaccine rollout, I think Malcolm Turnbull hit it on the head. But we know that when it comes to public health and Medicare, we know that this government isn't serious about investing in Medicare. We saw the Minister for Health, the Minister for Government Services and the Prime Minister conspire together to make changes to some 900 Medicare payments. They did this under the cover of COVID. It's something that I know I've had a lot of concern from my constituents. I've been out in the doors talking to people about it. It is a huge concern. And these cuts to Medicare don't just hurt when they happen, but they hurt over time. I haven't forgotten that they froze the Medicare payment for 6 years, making it harder to find a bulk billing doctor, making it harder because you had to pay more of a gap each time you went to the doctor. And then we've got the big questions about the future of not just ourselves, but the future of our children and our grandchildren. Climate change. Completely divided on the question of net zero. Now here in Western Australia, the state government has signed up to net zero by 2050. In fact, every state and territory in the country has signed up to net zero by 2050. But Scott Morrison and Barnaby Joyce can't agree on this. And the net result is it's going to mean higher food prices, higher power bills, and less stable investments for those retirees who might be somewhat self-funded or be on a part pension. We know that even the Treasurer has started saying that it's an investment risk if they don't get their act together on climate change. But over the last 8 years, they haven't done it, so I don't think they will next year either. And then finally, you've got this question of what they've done with COVID supplements. We saw yesterday the Treasurer saying that he is planning to scrap the COVID payments that so many millions of people have been relying on. We've seen those terrible lockdowns that have happened in Victoria, New South Wales, necessary to keep people safe. But the thing that's been able to help get people through it has been fair, equitable COVID supplements. And to start planning the cuts when you haven't actually got the path out of COVID and you didn't order enough vaccines is just absolute madness. All of these things put the health of pensioners at risk. So I just thought it was worth sort of covering off some of those concerns that I know, because it's never just one thing with this government. It's kind of death by 1,000 cuts. Now, if we look at what we've seen on the government side, I want to be really clear with you about what Labor will do. Labor will continue in the House of Representatives, where I am, and the Senate to oppose the plans to expand the cashless debit card and to roll out the cashless pension card. We've said that an elected federal Labor government under Anthony Albanese would abolish the privatised card immediately. In communities where the card is already in place, we will work with local communities on what comes next and try and shift our focus to more jobs and more services rather than more penalising measures. We are opposed to broad income-based income management. The evidence shows us it does not work. We're calling also on the government to scrap their contract with Inju and repeal their cashless debit card legislation. The government will say what they want. I'm sure the minister will come on and have some more alternate facts that she posts on my Facebook page, as she often does when people talk about this very important issue. But the 2.6 million pensioners of Australia deserve to know the truth. The 241,000 pensioners in Western Australia deserve to know the truth. And I tell everyone of the 13,822 age pensioners in my electorate of Perth, I will never back a cashless pension card. I'll go to this election campaigning to stop Scott Morrison's cashless welfare plans. I'm going to try and get a few more of your comments and then a few more comments from people in my electorate, and then we'll sort of wrap it up. So get your last questions in. Heather asks, how are you going to get this information out to the public? They're too apathetic, she says. Well, Heather, I'd just say, share this video, share these facts with your friends. Have a look on the Australian Labor and the Protecting Pensioners Task Force website, Facebook pages, get the message out. Paul says Frydenberg is a joke. I agree. We've got Callum asking, will companies like Woolies and Coles be given access to the data from the card? Well, they are on the technical working group, and because we don't know, because that working group has been held in secret. I can't actually answer that question, but I think it's a fair assumption. I had some pensioners write to me recently who had some views about what it would mean right here in the Perth electorate. Karen from Bayswater said she likes to buy a wine or two, and that under this government under this government plan for a cashless pension card, she won't be able to. Kira from Mount Lawley was worried that it would stop her being able to support local businesses. Mac from Mount Hawthorn served as an infantry forward scout, and he was in the military, and he said that the cashless pension card was, quote, a direct rejection of everything I have stood or fought for. Bob from Bassendean said that he would be embarrassed to use a cashless pension card. Louise from Maylands was a primary school teacher her whole life, and just, whatever you've done in life, thank you for working and paying taxes for decades and decades. But a particular thank you to those who are teachers who actually help lift up and educate the next generation. My folks were both primary school teachers. It's an incredibly rewarding career personally, but it's not one that pays the big bucks. And so I understand, you worked your whole life and then to be forced onto this cashless pension card. I understand what Louise is saying. Louise said she would feel, quote, humiliated and worthless. And I don't think we should be doing anything in government that makes people feel that way. Haiti from Chewett Hill said that a cashless pension card would mean not being able to buy a beer or have a bet now and then. And I think with Melbourne Cup coming up, it's a pretty obvious reminder that pensioners under this plan would not be able to have a bet on the Melbourne Cup. I'll run through some final effects of a cashless debit card, and then we might wrap it up unless I can get some more questions up here. I'll just try and do that quickly. It's important I try and get back to you if you've joined us along this journey. The cashless pension card means more red tape for small businesses. True. It means businesses will be forced to discriminate between customers. It means we'll waste government funds despite dealing with $1 trillion of debt. There we go, I found the comments again. All right, let's see what else we've got here. I'll scroll through. Co says the card is disgusting and doesn't allow choice. Ross says, does it mean politicians won't be asking for their pension? Well, I think that's pretty unlikely, Ross. We've got Nathan saying this is another way of taking away people's freedom. Got someone from Brisbane saying scrap the card. Yes. David Vallon, who's not really on topic, but he said that he's a Labor member and he's proud to be part of the WA election campaign. Well, David, I hope you're signing up to help us get rid of Scott Morrison too. We've got Gail says, this country is a joke now. Well, look, Gail, I think it's a pretty good country, but I agree that the government has kind of gotten beyond a laughing stock. We've got, I've read out that one. Sharon is pointing out that if Labor wins the election, we'll scrap the privatised card. That's correct. So thank you all for tuning in and sharing some of your comments there. I'm just going to wrap up with two things. One is the government's record when it comes to pensioners. 2014, they tried to cut $80 from the pension with the removal of indexation. 2014 again, they had a $900 cut to the seniors supplement, and they cut $1 billion from pensioner concessions. 2015, they did a deal with the Greens political party to cut the pension for around 370,000 people. 2016, they cut the pension for about 190,000 pensioners as part of a plan to limit overseas travel for pensioners. And then they tried to cut the pension for 1.5 million pensioners by scrapping energy supplements. 2020, they tried to freeze the pension for 2.5 million pensioners. And last year was the first time they did not increase the pension in more than 23 years. Labor opposed this and we got extra payments for pensioners in November and February of this year. And we know that one of the first things they did when they were elected in 2014 in that Abbott hockey budget that Scott Morrison was intimately involved in, they tried to increase the pension age to 70. Every year, every budget, this government has tried to make life harder for pensioners. and now they're going to try and make the budgets of pensioners even harder. So let's work together. Let's stop this cashless pension card, and I'll leave you with a few things you can do. You can share this information on Facebook. If you see graphics or information about the cashless pension card, share it. Share this video, hit share below, get the message out there. Write to your local MP, ask them where they stand on cashless welfare. Write to the Prime Minister and tell him, hands off my pension. Follow Labor's Protecting Pensioner Task Force webpage on Facebook so you can stay engaged. But there is only one way to guarantee that we end the madness of this cashless pension card. That's to get rid of this government. Vote them out at the next election. Vote out the senators who help them in the Senate each time. Pauline Hanson, Clive Palmer's mob and all the rest. Put in an Anthony Albanese Labor government who will give pensioners and all Australians the respect they deserve. Thanks for joining us. I hope to talk to you again soon. I'll get back to all of your comments below when I can.